Here is Immortal Moments for explanation. Friends, like videos and subscribes to our channel. Martial Universe Season 10 Part 31 Explanation. So let's start our explanation. Beast War Region, Deep Lightning Mountain. The current Deep Lightning Mountain was clearly a lot livelier compared to 2 months ago, and their headquarters had also expanded tremendously. Countless powerful auras surged within the many mountains, while troops occasionally patrolled the skies, their sharp eyes scanning every part of Deep Lightning Mountain Range. Thanks to the fight that took place at Divine Item Mountain Range, Deep Lightning Mountain had completely established themselves in the Beast War region. In fact, their reputation was no longer inferior to that of the three great demon commanders' factions. Moreover, thanks to the mysterious divine palace that Lindorm had obtained, they had a large number of divine objects in their hands, a fact that was sufficient to make many factions jealous. Hence, soon after the recruitment order was given, various powerful individuals came swarming over in hopes of taking advantage of this opportunity to enter Deep Lightning Mountain to obtain a divine object. However, Deep Lightning Mountain was clearly wary of these individuals. Therefore, not only was the recruitment criteria incomparably harsh, but those recruited must provide a certain amount of contributions before they were given a divine object. This so-called contribution required these people to lead their men to fight for territory on behalf of Deep Lightning Mountain, or to collect various resources. In summary, it was not an easy task to fulfill this criteria. These powerful individuals were likewise well aware of this. However, a divine object was indeed rare to come by, and obtaining one would boost one's strength significantly. Moreover, Deep Lightning Mountain was no longer the same as before, and even the other three great demon commanders' factions did not dare to offend them. Therefore, joining Deep Lightning Mountain would be akin to gaining an additional layer of protection. As such, despite the harsh recruitment criteria, there was still a long queue to join. Thanks to the extremely energetic recruiting of Deep Lightning Mountain, it slowly became the focal point of the entire Beast War region. Everyone began to feel that this faction, which was once as stiff as a pool of still water, was now brimming with life and vitality. It was likely that Deep Lightning Mountain would become the most dazzling existence in the Beast War region in the future. On the peak of the main mountain of Deep Lightning Mountain were a series of towering halls. 100,000 feet large square lay in front of the most majestic-looking hall. At this moment, a black torrent-like mass of figures was silently seated on the square-like statues. Shocking and ferocious auras radiated from their bodies. These figures wore dark black armor which were covered in mysterious patterns. These patterns appeared to move as they breathed, while mysterious and powerful ripples vaguely spread from them. If one was to carefully observe this black torrent, one would discover that each and every individual of this over 1,000 army was breathing in unison. Tiny bits of aura rose from their bodies, before they gathered in midair, seemingly forming a giant 100,000 feet large darkness tiger. The giant tiger lay in the sky as if in a slumber. However, everyone could clearly sense how brutal it would be once it opened its eyes. Various other departments in Deep Lightning Mountain would occasionally walk past the square. However, their eyes were frightened and envious when they looked at the black torrent on the square. Everyone knew that the tiger-devouring army was the most powerful faction in Deep Lightning Mountain, and every person in this faction was equipped with a divine object. The scale of this army would make any faction jealous. Of course, the only group in the entire Deep Lightning Mountain who could enjoy such luxurious treatment was the tiger-devouring army. As a result, many people desperately tried to join. However, it was obvious that this was no simple task. In fact, their bloody and cruel selection method caused many experts, who thought highly of themselves, to feel their scalps turn numb. This square faced a majestic great hall. A few pairs of eyes within the great hall were currently staring at this tiger-devouring army with burning desire. Deep Lightning Mountain is really generous. It is likely that this tiger-devouring army alone will be able to match a Samsara stage expert. A couple of familiar-looking groups from various factions were seated in the large hall. If one was to take a closer look, one would realize that they were actually the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander, Ghost Condor Demon Commander and the Gold-Armored Golden Ape Demon Commander. Little Flame's metal tower-like body was seated in the leader's spot. A baleful aura lingered around his rough-looking face, and not even the slightest bit of fear was present when faced with the three strongest leaders in the Beast War region. His lips cracked open as he said, "The three of you did not come to my deep lightning mountain merely to utter such nonsense, am I right?" Little Flame clearly did not have a good impression of these three who tried to stop them back at Divine Item Mountain range. Additionally, the current Deep Lightning Mountain was not afraid of them. Hence, Little Flame was not overly courteous when he spoke to them. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander's veins bulged upon seeing Little Flame's attitude. However, he also knew that the current Deep Lightning Mountain was different from before. Forget about that abnormally powerful young man from the Celestial Demon Martin tribe, even this increasingly vicious Little Flame caused him to feel a little fear. After all, he understood that if Little Flame was to join forces with his tiger-devouring army, even he would have no choice but to retreat. Moreover, that fellow called Lindorn was the person whom he was most wary and even frightened of. None of these three brothers were pushovers. "Ha ha, Commander Yang should know the reason why we came. That incident has created a huge uproar recently." The Golden Ape Demon Commander laughed bitterly and sighed. Little Flame had an indifferent expression as he replied, "The grudge between Mang Mountain region and you three great demon commanders has nothing to do with my Deep Lightning Mountain." Little Flame was naturally aware of the matter that the Golden Ape Demon Commander was referring to. This was because this matter had recently stirred a huge commotion in the entire Beast War region. In fact, the commotion stirred by this incident was not inferior to that of the incident back then at Divine Item Mountain range. The source of this incident stemmed from the Mang Mountain region, which was located right next to the Beast War region. Like the Beast War region, the Mang Mountain region was also an extremely vast region, and its size was definitely not inferior to that of the Beast War region. Moreover, both these territories typically did not interfere in each other's matters. However, ever since news of the incident at Divine Item Mountain range spread, it clearly caused some repercussions. One of them was Mang Mountain region invading the Beast War region. The three great demon commanders, who held the highest positions in the Beast War region, were naturally the first to be affected by the invasion. The three great demon commanders were naturally rather furious over this matter. Mang Mountain region's action was undoubtedly a declaration of war against them. Nonetheless, despite their anger, their expressions became a little ugly when they recalled the strength of the Mang Mountain region. This Mang Mountain region was relatively famous in the demonic beast world. This was because the Mang Mountain region was one of the few regions that was completely unified. It was not as chaotic as the Beast War region, which had different factions competing against each other. Instead, only one faction existed in the entire Mang Mountain region. That faction was known as Mang Mountain. There were 5 great chiefs in Mang Mountain, and all of them were at the Samsara stage. Moreover, there were also many powerful individuals under them. Although the 3 great demon commanders' factions were strong, they were still significantly weaker than Mang Mountain. This was also why the 3 great commanders were having a headache. They could not defeat the other party, nor could they choose to retreat. Hence, all they could do was to look for their previous enemy, Deep Lightning Mountain. After all, everyone had clearly witnessed the strength of Deep Lightning Mountain. If they joined forces, it was likely that Mang Mountain would become a little more wary. Commander Yang, owing to our reputation, us 3 great demon commanders will be the first to be hit when Mang Mountain invades the Beast War region. However, if we are defeated, the other factions in the Beast War region can only choose between submitting or fleeing. At that time, even Deep Lightning Mountain will not be able to escape unscathed. The Ghost Condor Demon Commander stared at Little Flame. He paused for a moment before continuing. Additionally, Mang Mountain's actions are likely related to the Divine Item Treasury. Since it is now in your Deep Lightning Mountain's possession, do you think that they will easily let you off after defeating us? I am aware that you have that Celestial Demon Martin brother. However, Mang Mountain also has a complicated background. Moreover, in order to obtain the Divine Item Treasury, it is likely they will not fear such things. Little Flame knitted his brows. He was naturally aware of this fact. However, it was a little foolish if he allowed the 3 great demon commanders to drag him onto the same boat. When trouble comes knocking, my Deep Lightning Mountain will handle it. There is no need for all of you to fret on our behalf. You? The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander involuntarily felt furious after witnessing Little Flame's indifferent attitude. He slammed his hands onto the stone table in front of him, instantly splitting it apart. Swoosh swoosh. However, rushing wind sounds immediately sounded in the large hall when the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander vented his anger. Promptly, many figures rushed out and stared sharply at the former. Even the tiger-devouring army in front of the hall suddenly let loose a low and deep tiger roar at the sky. Heaven Dragon Demon Commander, this is my deep lightning mountain. I'm afraid you cannot act as you please here. Little Flame stared at the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander with balefulness as he coldly shouted. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander's face turned steely green. Despite the fury he felt in his heart, he could only let out a cold snort. After all, this was the headquarters of Deep Lightning Mountain and the tiger-devouring army was waiting right outside. Therefore, even someone as hot-tempered as himself had no choice but to back down. Commander Yang, you should be well aware of how serious this issue is. Please give us a reply. Mang Mountain has set up a sky battle arena and sent out the 5 great chiefs. However, we only have 3 individuals on our side. The Golden Ape Demon Commander helplessly said. Little Flame became quiet. A moment later, he finally said, "This is an extremely important matter. I will make my decision after Big Brother returns. He has already been gone for 2 months. I'm afraid that we do not have the luxury of time." The Golden Ape Demon Commander bitterly laughed. However, Little Flame's expression changed right after the Golden Ape Demon Commander spoke. He suddenly lifted his head to look at the entrance of the hall where a figure was slowly walking in. After which, a familiar laughter echoed in the hall. "Ha ha, it is so lively the moment I return. 3 great demon commanders, how have you guys been?" "Big Brother." Little Flame rose in surprise. The figure at the entrance to the hall moved and appeared at the empty leader position. He smilingly stared at the 3 great demon commanders. It was Lin Dong, who had just hurried back from the dragon tribe. Lin Dong looked at the 3 great demon commanders and smiled. "I am already aware of this matter. It is indeed difficult to deal with Mang Mountain, but it is not impossible." "Oh?" The Golden Ape Demon Commander trio were startled. Their eyes stared at Lin Dong in surprise. The reason why Mang Mountain is so powerful is because they are united. Therefore, there is a simple way to deal with them. All we need to do is to unite the entire Beast War region. Lin Dong smiled slightly. However, there was an indescribable feeling behind his smile. This was a good opportunity to expand Deep Lightning Mountain. Unite the Beast War region? In the Great Hall, the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander trio were a little taken aback. Soon after, they lifted their heads and looked at the smiling Lin Dong, before speaking without any change in their expressions. "What do you mean? The 3 of you should understand the meaning behind my words." Lin Dong grinned before he continued in an inattentive manner. "The Beast War region is like loose sand, in other words, a terrible mess. The only way to fight Mang Mountain is to gather the many factions and form an alliance. Otherwise, I'm afraid that we will not be able to resist them. The Beast War region is chaotic to begin with. How can it be so easy to unite?" The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander coldly snorted and voiced his thoughts. "There are indeed many factions within the Beast War region. However, most of them are attached to our 4 great factions. As long as this is our intention, the matter will be more or less decided." Lin Dong smilingly said. Although Deep Lightning Mountain was currently rapidly expanding, it was still far from the level that Lin Dong needed. Yet, it was pointless to be anxious in the face of this situation. After all, one might end up choking if one ate too quickly. However, the present situation was a rather good opportunity. If it was really possible to unite the factions within the Beast War region, Lin Dong was confident in gradually making Deep Lightning Mountain the main faction of this alliance, even if it was impossible to directly obtain full control of it. At that time, it was likely that even the 3 other great demon commanders would have no choice but to integrate themselves into Deep Lightning Mountain. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander had an indescribable expression. They had long thought of forming an alliance. From a certain point of view, it was indeed not difficult if they were willing. However, once they formed a new huge faction like Mang Mountain, who would be the leader of this faction? The similarly cunning three great demon commanders had naturally also thought about the hidden ambition of Lindong to unify all the factions under himself. However, the power of their three factions were on par with each other, and it was basically impossible to make one submit to either of the other two. Ha ha, we merely need to deal with Mang Mountain. There is no need to go so far, right? The Ghost Condor Demon Commander laughed dryly. He possessed absolute control in his own faction. However, once an alliance was formed, his authority would naturally diminish. If there is a Mang Mountain today, there might be a Minute Mountain tomorrow. Don't tell me that we are going to do this again when the time comes. This is a solution that solves the root of the problem. Moreover, even though the three of you are well known in the Beast War region, you only possess a small territory here. If we were to unite, our strength will definitely soar. In future, our territory might no longer be limited to the Beast War region. Lindong smiled and spoke in a faint voice. Of course, if the three of you are satisfied with being overlords of your own respective small territories, take it as if I did not say anything. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander trio's hands abruptly tightened after hearing Lindong's last few words as excitement flashed deep within their eyes. All of them were quite powerful and the ambition in their hearts was naturally not small. They had thought of trying to make a name for themselves, but from a certain point of view, they had reached their limits in their present state. None of them possessed an overly shocking background. Although the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander had some relation with the Dragon Tribe, it was clear that he had barely any say within it. This was despite him having a strength that could match some elders. Therefore, even though they might be able to become an overlord of a territory within this Beast War region, they would at most be slightly well known in the entire demonic beast world. Therefore, an enormous faction consisting of a united region like Mang Mountain did not give them any face and had attacked as it pleased. However, the three of them had no solution to this sullen state. Even if we form an alliance, do you have any way to give us a background that others will not dare to look down upon? The Golden Ape Demon Commander's expression fluctuated as he continued in a deep voice. The reason Mang Mountain can rule over the Mang Mountain region is because that place is within the territory managed by the Nine Phoenix tribe. The 5 great leaders of Mang Mountain have also all pledged their loyalty to the Nine Phoenix tribe. Nine Phoenix tribe. Lindong was taken aback. He clearly did not expect that Mang Mountain would be related to the Nine Phoenix tribe, one of the 4 overlord tribes. It was no wonder that even the Golden Ape Demon Commander trio was so wary of them. We are aware that you have a brother from the Celestial Demon Martin tribe. However, even he will have difficulty getting the Celestial Demon Martin tribe to back us, right? The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander said in a cold voice. Lindong glanced at the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander and said, "My brother is temporarily unable to represent the Celestial Demon Martin tribe. However, I can pull the Dragon tribe to our side." Dragon tribe. The Golden Ape Demon Commander and Ghost Condor Demon Commander were stunned. Soon after, they looked towards the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander with strange expressions. In this place, only the latter had some relation with the Dragon tribe. Yet, Lindong had spoken such words in front of him, making this scene seem a little comical. TCH, the Dragon tribe has always been neutral. It is impossible for them to agree to back us. The Dragon tribe has never given me any help over the years while I was establishing Blood Dragon Hall. Even less needs to be said for yourself. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander ridiculed. You are you, I am I? Lindong slightly lowered his eyes. His faint voice also contained some mockery. What right do you have to utter these words? The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander was furious as he sneered. If you believe that you can get us to agree to your suggestions with these words, I'm afraid that you are a little too naive. Heaven Dragon Demon Commander, you better be a little more polite. Little Flame's eyes were filled with a baleful aura as he stared at the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander and shouted. Lindong waved his hand. His eyes contained some playfulness as he stared at the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander. Soon after, he gently bent his long fingers as a purplish gold light flashed and appeared. A purplish gold dragon seal was held in his hand as he lazily asked, "Heaven Dragon Demon Commander, do you recognize this thing?" The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander's eyes immediately shot towards Lindong's hand. Quickly after, the Golden Ape Demon Commander and Ghost Condor Demon Commander saw the sneering look on the former's face stiffened little by little as rich shock and disbelief replaced it. This is the Dragon Tribe's punishment seal? Why is it in your hands?" The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander was stupefied. He immediately cried out in anger, "How dare you steal the Dragon Tribe's punishment seal? Are you seeking death? Do you know how serious of a crime this is?" "Crime? This was given to me by the Dragon Tribe's Grand Elder. What crime have I committed?" Lindong smilingly looked at the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander as his eyes gradually became ice cold. "I am the new punishment elder of the Dragon Tribe. Do you know that as a member of the Dragon Tribe, you have already committed a crime by contradicting me?" The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander's expression changed as he raged, "Nonsense! How can an outsider like yourself take the position of the Dragon Tribe's punishment elder?" Lindong had an indifferent expression. He slowly stood up, holding the punishment seal in his hand as his skin gradually became akin to crystal. An indescribably pure and mighty pressure swept out from within his body and enveloped the large hall. The surrounding air seemed to freeze as this mighty pressure spread, causing even the Golden Ape Demon Commander duo to have grave expressions. They could clearly feel the pureness of this pressure. Even an expert who possessed the most authentic dragon bloodline did not possess such a pure dragon pressure. The both of them turned their eyes towards the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander, only to find that the latter's face was pale. As a member of the Dragon Tribe, it was obvious that the pressure emitted by the primal dragon bones within Lindong's body greatly suppressed him. This pressure. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander's eyes trembled as they stared at Lindong. It was as though he was peering into Lindong's body. The crystal-clear bones deep in his body appeared just like a coiling jade dragon. This ancient being gave off an endless pressure. These dragon bones, could it be that you actually possess the ancient dragon bone? The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander involuntarily cried out. He could sense just how powerful the dragon bones in Lindong's body were. It was likely that only the ancient dragon bones possessed such dense and pure pressure. The corners of Lindong's mouth curled slightly, but he did not bother to give any explanation. It was likely that the ancient dragon bones were already able to deter the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander. Hence, he did not elaborate. It was always best to hold back a little. "I made a trip to the ancient dragon transformation pool. Now, are there any other questions?" Lindong asked in a flat voice. "Ancient dragon transformation pool." The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander muttered to himself. That was a sacred land in his heart. The dragon bone in his body was only at the middle grade. If he could enter the dragon transformation pool, it would likely raise the purity of his bloodline. Unfortunately, he did not possess the qualifications to enter that place. Although he was also considered a member of the Dragon Tribe, he was merely a fringe member, and it was likely that he would even have difficulty being accepted by the Dragon Tribe if not for his Samsara stage strength. Heaven Dragon greets the Punishment Elder. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander finally recovered from his absent-minded state. He hurriedly got up and greeted Lindong with the courtesy of the Dragon Tribe. The Dragon Tribe had strict rules. Additionally, the Punishment Elder possessed an authority which was second only to the tribe leader. He understood that if he was to offend Lindong, who was the Punishment Elder, he would only end up suffering. At this moment, he had finally kept all the disrespect he had for Lindong. The punishment seal in Lindong's possession had a suppressive effect against the members of the Dragon Tribe. Hence, he understood that he would likely end up in an extremely miserable state if Lindong used the punishment seal against him. Lindong quietly sighed in relief upon seeing that this untamable and proud fellow had submitted. Soon after, he waved his hand and said, "I am the new Punishment Elder of the Dragon Tribe. If we form an alliance, I will let all of you have the protection of the Dragon Tribe. Now, do any of you have any other questions?" The three great demon commanders exchanged glances with each other. Heaven Dragon, although it is very difficult for an outsider to enter the ancient dragon transformation pool, I might be able to think of a way for you to enter in future. Lin Dong smiled faintly and said. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander's body shook upon hearing this. He lifted his head and looked at Lin Dong with somewhat trembling eyes as he quickly nodded in a violent manner. I will obey Elder's orders. This temptation Lin Dong offered made it impossible for the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander to reject. As for the two of you, both of you have already met my second brother. He is one of the potential successors for the position of tribe leader in the Celestial Demon Martin tribe. If he succeeds, he will control the Celestial Demon Martin tribe in the future. At that time, we will have some relation with both the Celestial Demon Martin tribe and the Dragon tribe. Both of you should understand what this means. Lin Dong turned his eyes towards the Golden Ape Demon Commander duo and warmly smiled. The Golden Ape Demon Commander duo opened and closed their mouths as a searing heat rose from deep within their eyes. If they really had two of the Overlord tribes backing them, it was likely that their reputation would shake the demonic beast world. This honor was rarely seen even in the entire demonic beast world. Therefore, after a brief struggle, the two of them faced each other before heavily nodding. Good. Lin Dong looked at those two who had finally agreed as a satisfied smile appeared on his face. Once they boarded his ship, it was not going to be easy to leave. The atmosphere within the hall became relaxed after the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander trio nodded. Standing at the side, Chen Tong and the rest stared at Lin Dong with a stunned expression on their faces. After all, they didn't expect that Lin Dong was actually able to convince the three top factions, who have dominated the Beast War region for decades, in less than an hour's time. As natives of the Beast War region, they were well aware of how chaotic this place was. Evidently, it was no easy task to unify this region. The biggest obstacle was naturally the three great demon commanders. Yet, this biggest obstacle was shattered by Lin Dong's smiling words alone. Gaining their approval meant that it was genuinely possible to unify the Beast War region. Therefore, one can easily imagine that after the union was completed, a new and powerful faction will be born in the Beast War region. Moreover, that faction would definitely surpass any other faction that has ever existed in the Beast War region. In fact, it would possess a solid reputation even when placed in the entire demonic beast world. He is indeed Lord Lin Dong. Chen Tong's group quietly exchanged glances with each other. They could see shock and marvel in each other's eyes. It was likely that the only person in the entire Beast War region who could pull off a feat like this was Lin Dong. Since the three of you have agreed, we can release the news. However, the Beast War region is a chaotic place. Even if we want to form an alliance, there will likely be some obstacles. However, I believe that the three of you should know how to handle these obstacles, am I right? Lin Dong looked at the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander as he smilingly said. You can be rest assured. It is only natural for there to be objections for such a large-scale move. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander parted his lips into a smile. His smile was filled with ferocity. They were well aware of the culture in the Beast War region. However, this was not a big problem for them. All they had to do was to kill anyone who dared to protest. After which, it was likely that most factions would not dare to protest. Blood would be inevitably spilled in a situation like this. Lin Dong nodded slightly. Following which, he gently leaned on his stone chair and said, this merger cannot be completed in a few days' time. However, since we are on the same boat, we must work together. Of course, we must work together to get through the difficult situation we are currently in. Tell me about that so-called Sky Battle Arena. I want to find out how domineering Mang Mountain is. The Golden Ape Demon Commander nodded. He paused for a moment before saying, if a fight breaks out between two huge regions, it will be akin to war and it will be a draining fight for both parties. Therefore, Mang Mountain chose the Sky Battle Arena format. Putting it simply, it is merely a fighting arena. Only those who are close, or have reached the Samsara stage can participate in the Sky Battle Arena. The Sky Battle Arena has a total of 5 rounds, with the winner of 3 rounds being the victor. Each party will send 5 members. It is likely that Mang Mountain will send its 5 great chiefs. On our side, however, there are only 3 of us who have reached the Samsara stage. Of course, if we include both you and the Commander Yang, we will not lose out to them. It is still a little difficult for Little Flame to fight a Samsara stage expert on his own. Lindong frowned and said, Big brother, there is no fixed format for the Sky Battle Arena. Therefore, I can bring along my tiger-devouring army if I participate. Little Flame parted his lips and laughed. If he was accompanied by his tiger-devouring army, which had grown much stronger than before, he would definitely be able to deal with a Samsara stage expert. Lindong nodded after hearing this. What happens if we lose? The Golden Ape Demon Commander trio exchanged glances with each other. Finally, they spoke in a deep voice. We will have to surrender half of the Beast War region to Mang Mountain. Of course, if they lose, they will also have to give us half of the Mang Mountain region. Even with his calm temperament, Lindong's eyelids twitched after hearing these words. Half of the Beast War region. Just how massive was that? How much resources did it contain? This fight was truly a massive gamble. If we do not agree to use this Sky Battle Arena format to resolve this issue, Mang Mountain will start a war. Should we end up being defeated, we will lose control over the entire Beast War region. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander said. Lindong nodded. Compared to a huge war, it was obvious that this Sky Battle Arena was far simpler. If that Celestial Demon Martin brother of yours is present, we will have no need to fear Mang Mountain's 5 great chiefs. The Ghost Condor Demon Commander said. Lindong tilted his head to glance at Little Flame. The latter shook his head and said, Second brother has returned to the Celestial Demon Martin tribe a few days ago. It seems like he had some urgent matters to deal with. Therefore, I am afraid that he will not be able to participate in this fight. A disappointed look flashed across the Ghost Condor Demon Commander's face when he heard this. If Little Martin was around, even the 9 Phoenix tribe would be a little wary of his Celestial Demon Martin identity. There is no need to worry. Since we have agreed to an alliance, I will naturally help all of you to get through this difficult situation. Lindong lowered his eyes. His voice was calm and without ripples. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander trio looked at Lindong, who had remained consistently calm throughout their conversation, before they nodded gently. They could clearly sense that Lindong had become much stronger, after having not seen him for 2 months. Additionally, the pressure that was vaguely emitted from his body caused them to be startled. As they recalled how formidable Lindong was when he fought against them 2 months ago, their hearts also began to relax. This person in front of them could not be judged using common logic. After all, this was something that they had experienced personally. Moreover, they were not hoping to defeat Mang Mountain. As long as they could match up to them and force the latter to give up, it could be considered as their victory. As to whether they could defeat the great chiefs from the other party in a genuine fight, this was something that they did not consider right now. After all, they clearly knew how difficult it was, even after including Lindong and Little Flame into their alliance. We have yet to give a reply to the battle invitation from Mang Mountain. This was because we were unable to find sufficient people to fight against the 5 of them. Now, can we finally give them our reply? The Golden Ape Demon Commander looked at Lindong and asked. Give them our reply. Lindong smiled and said softly. All right. A fighting intent surged on the faces of the Golden Ape Demon Commander trio. They had been pushed around and forced into a rather miserable state by Mang Mountain over these past few days. However, they were constantly giving in because they were afraid of the other party's strength and their background. However, right now, they no longer had any reason to fear because of Lindong. Since they had pushed them to their limits, there was no longer a need to endure any longer. Besides, since we are going to form an alliance, our alliance should naturally have a name. Since this plan is suggested by young brother Lindong, in that case, you should be the one, the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander smiled. His attitude towards Lindong was suddenly much warmer than before. After all, as a member of the Dragon Tribe, he clearly knew what the Punishment Elder represented. This alliance is formed by our 4 factions. Let's call it 4 Titans Palace. What do you all say? Lindong softly laughed and said. The name 4 Titans is indeed domineering. The Golden Ape Demon Commander trio muttered and nodded in agreement. Since our alliance has been formed, let's reply to the battle invitation. We will duke it out with Mang Mountain at the demonic beast ancient plains. The eyes of the trio were filled with excitement. They knew that once news of this incident spread, it would cause the entire Beast War region to churn and boil. Such a big event could be considered as the grandest event that took place in the Beast War region over the last century. The Beast War region was a little chaotic during this recent period of time. The uproar from the Divine Item mountain range had only just subsided when Mang Mountain region invaded. This commotion could be considered earth-shaking, and it caused everyone in the Beast War region to become anxious and frightened. Everyone was well aware of the strength of Mang Mountain. In a one-on-one fight, they would definitely be able to crush any one of the three great demon commanders' factions. A majority of the factions in the Beast War region allied themselves with one of the three great demon commanders' factions. If those three were defeated, it would have serious implications for them. Additionally, there was a high likelihood that the three great demon commanders would lose. This was startlingly obvious from how the three great demon commanders refused to formally reply to the battle invitation from Mang Mountain for such a long period of time. Should the three great demon commanders wound up defeated, the Beast War region would be under the control of Mang Mountain region. At that time, the current situation would be completely re-established. This was undoubtedly a catastrophic blow for many of the native factions. Hence, the entire Beast War region was living in fear over this period of time. However, they also felt quite helpless. After all, they were not qualified to interfere in a fight at this level. The only thing they could do was hope that the three great demon commanders' factions could withstand the pressure from Mang Mountain. However, while the entire Beast War region was in a state of panic, a piece of news finally emerged from within the three great demon commanders' factions. That piece of news did not contain much information. Nevertheless, it shook the entire Beast War region instantly. Deep Lightning Mountain, Blood Dragon Hall, Ghost Condor Stream and Golden Ape Mountain had announced the formation of an alliance called the For Titans Palace. The Beast War region erupted into an uproar the moment the news spread. In fact, many individuals were completely stunned. After all, none of them expected that these four massive factions, who were usually at odds with each other, would actually form an alliance. Moreover, everyone knew that Deep Lightning Mountain had just engaged in a huge fight with the three other factions 2 months ago. However, despite being overwhelmed by shock, many powerful individuals in the Beast War region began to rejoice. After all, they clearly knew that this alliance was formed in order to counter the invasion from Mang Mountain. This was indeed the only way to strike fear in the other party's heart. Many people maintained an optimistic, curious, yet puzzled attitude towards this alliance. That was because it was the only alliance formed in the Beast War region in 100 years. In fact, some sharper individuals vaguely felt that the chaotic Beast War region might end up changing its past ways. Moreover, if this entire region was to unify and form a single entity like Mang Mountain, it was likely that the Beast War region would possess quite a high status even within the entire demon region. Of course, the precondition was that this newly formed For Titans Palace could truly survive the thunderstorm-like attacks of Mang Mountain. Otherwise, this alliance will only disappoint and suffer an early demise. With this thought in mind, countless pairs of eyes in the Beast War region and even other surrounding regions like the Mang Mountain region were all focused on the demonic beast ancient plains, the place where the fight would be held. This fight will determine whether this newly formed alliance will prosper or fall in defeat. This episode ends here.